Okay, YouTubers, I'm trying to calculate Nibiru's orbit. Now, that news item, those two different news items, had something out there at 50 billion miles away in 83, and a brown dwarf at 7 plus billion miles away in 92. I don't think it's going to cover that much ground in that time. What strikes me as possible is there's some other object out there which Nibiru may loop around as well as our sun, and this would make its orbit so erratic, probably it'd be impossible to calculate. However, bearing in mind that exactly what its effects would have on us would depend entirely on the position it was in relative to us and the sun when it breaks the ecliptic coming into the inner solar system, and also when it breaks the ecliptic going out, and whether it is behind us, presumably somewhere inside Mars' orbit, or ahead of us, closer to the sun, inside the orbit of Venus or even Mercury. It follows that there are going to likely have been times in the past when it came through and there were no unusual effects to speak of. Nothing that wouldn't likely happen for other reasons anyway. Now, online I found this after I put some inquiries on Usenet to Alt Archaeology and SCI Archaeology, and thanks for the help I got there. And there's a claim that there's a chain of impact craters across Europe that date to 200 BC. There seems also to have been a catastrophe destroying trees, maximizing distribution of dead wood-eating fungus, therefore, all over the world when Pangea was torn apart. Now, of course, this happened millions of years ago by standard chronology. By Bible chronology, this was in Peleg's time after the flood. However, getting down to more easily tracked dates, in 200 BC, you have that event that I just mentioned, and then in 536 AD on Wikipedia, there is extreme weather in 535 to 536 AD. It cites Procopius, describing that the sun did not give enough light. It was like it wasn't like it was eclipsed. It was just very darkened by this enormous haze, and there was famine and stuff, and reports all over the world, and it was speculated that this was caused by either huge volcanic eruptions or meteorite impacts. Of course, both are consistent with being too close to a massive gravitational force and or being in its debris field. In one place, the famine lasted 3 years, another place it lasted 2. So this would be presumably been a flyby that was very destructive, as was the one in 200 BC. Now, I did a little math. 536, definitely, you've got a specific date, and you've got a description of situation that would be consistent with this. Let's assume that it's due in very late in 2012 or early in 2013. So I went 2013, oh dear, should be 2012.9. I wrote it down as 2013.9. I did 2012.10 minus 536. 2012.10 would be October 2012, when it might begin to start creating problems. Minus 536 equals 738.05. Let's call it 738 and a half years. Now, at that point, if you treat 2013.9 as equivalent to 536, that's sort of, by that time things get nasty. Okay, you got 2013 plus 738.5 equals 1274.5, or 6 months into 1274 AD. Now, there were some unusual weather events and so on there, some storms, and sometimes of historic significance. such as the kamikaze or divine wind in Japan that routed the Mongols, and some other events. But it was comparatively mild. It wasn't anything really drastic all over the world. Though there was a famine that wiped out the Anasazi, but there were famines at various times throughout the world for other reasons. You add another 738.5 years, you get back to AD 536. Now, to that, you go another 738.5 years, and you get 201.5 BC. 636, 736, 836, 936, 10. Wait a minute. 536, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. There's no 0 here. 100, 200. I think that should read 199.5 BC. Anyway, the point is that puts it in the range of that disaster in 200 BC. That would have to be an approximate date. So it looks like this thing has a cycle of 738 and a half years. Sometimes when it comes around, it's not that bad. Other times, everybody's living rough anyway, so, you know, so it doesn't make that much difference. Now, pushing up in time from 201.5 BC, because you drop a year, there's no year 0, so year 1 AD is followed by year 1 BC. Plus 738.5, you get to 940 BC, plus 738.5, you get to 1678.5, that'd be June, I guess, BC. Now, that means this has nothing to do with the Exodus. The highest dates and the lowest dates of the Exodus, the lowest dates are nowhere near 940 BC. The highest dates are way below 1678, except for some crackpot. Plus 738.5 brings you to 2417 BC. Now, I mentioned before that there was apparently some disaster that brought the Sixth Dynasty to, and a lot of civilization to an end at the end of the Sixth Dynasty of Egypt. And this was dated 2300 BC by the source. But given that the Egyptian dating is often shaky and subject to all kinds of revision, that it might have occurred in 2417 BC instead of 2300 would be a distinct possibility. It's been said that Egypt, at least in the past, would be a good place to weather a bad situation, and it might very well be that what started from a disaster in 2417 BC bore fruit 117 years later in some way, with a collapse that was triggered by events that began back then. Anyway, it looks to me like Nibiru's on a 738 and a half year orbit.